welcome to Bite Size Stories. Today we meet Amanda Wright. Amanda Wright was lost. She knew that she should have taken a left turn onto Windermere, but she had no idea whether she had passed it or not. If only her GPS would recalculate, she reasoned, she wouldn't be in this position. She might have made it to the party on time. Okay, it wasn't just the fault of her GPS. It might have been the time she took to get ready, or the lengthy phone call she had had with Mason. But if he hadn't started the route, then she would have been on time. This party hadn't been her idea anyway. Her parents were always coming up with ideas on how to integrate her into their bourgeois lifestyle, but she truly wasn't interested. Tonight was a celebration of local musicians, strings players mostly, who would gather and sip champagne whilst bemoaning the lack of grants available to emerging artists these days. How Amanda was expected to contribute to this conversation was beyond her. She had always been a social butterfly, but typically with people her own age. What did a 28-year-old administrative assistant have to say to these musicians? How's your new track? Nevertheless, she would attend the party. It would embarrass her parents if she didn't, and more importantly, it would potentially impact her monthly allowance from her trust fund. Lately, Amanda had been considering changing careers, and she was loath to cut her income while she was doing it. Of course, she wouldn't tell her parents that she was quitting her job. That could wait until she was established. People said being an influencer took time, after all, and she would need plenty of ammo to convince her parents that it was a viable career. She hadn't decided yet on the topics she would cover as an influencer. Maybe she would travel? Traveling was so passé nowadays. Who was impressed by Machu Picchu anymore? She'd probably have to do something much more aggressive to garner any attention. Something out there. Something like nudist farming. Not that she had any experience with that. In the meantime, she had to find a new place to live. Her current roommate, Liz, was getting married and was moving out this Saturday. When Liz had first broken the news, Amanda had been excited for her, of course, but also devastated. Mason wasn't a long-term viable boyfriend, so there was no way she was moving in with him, and she didn't want to live alone. Who would know if she didn't come home from running one day if she didn't have a roommate? The thought completely stressed her out. Maybe she would move in with a large group. That way she could date the guys and see if they were viable, while also making friends with the girls. She would look at the paper tomorrow and see what was available. People were always posting ads on Thursday in time for weekend viewings. Thank goodness for Thursdays. Amanda loved quizzes. She loved all quizzes, but particularly those which came in glossies like Cosmo and such. Are you an overachiever? Do you pick bad men? These ideas fascinated her, and she frequently fixated upon the answers, calling Mason to discuss whether or not he thought she was a free spirit who needed to be reined in. Typically, Mason deferred, but still, Amanda insisted on asking. As a result of this, she was ecstatic to be given a list of questions when she got pushed through to her future landlord's voicemail. What is your age? 28. What is your job? Influencer. And what are your hobbies? Dating, amateur acting, decorating, and charcoal drying. But would she be willing to take out the trash? Amanda considered the last question thoroughly before answering. Liz had definitely performed this duty throughout their 3-year stint as roommates, but Amanda supposed she could pull it off if she reminded herself with a post-it. After a lengthy hesitation, she agreed. Amanda was late for her home viewing with Jason. This was becoming a trend, she realized belatedly. Maybe it was only a trend with places she didn't want to be. When she was a full-time influencer, she really reasoned she wouldn't be late for anything. What would there be to be late for anyway? It wouldn't be anything like her current job where her boss monitored her arrival and departure time, along with how many minutes she spent in the bathroom each day. She reminded herself to ask her father if that last bit was even legal. As she pulled into the drive, Amanda checked out the front of the house and decided that it met her standards. She wasn't exactly sure what her standards were, of course, but this house looked nice. It faced the road directly with a large covered porch attached to the front. A variety of flowers and shrubs were planted in borders around the lawn, although neither the flowers nor the lawn looked to have been tended to recently. Upon meeting Jason, she reflected that perhaps the house was very much like its owner, although the house clearly wasn't an alcoholic. Not so much could be said for Jason, who reeked of stale beer. Amanda reminded herself that it was, in fact, 3 p.m. on a Saturday, which was a perfectly acceptable time to be drinking. For some people, at least. People like her parents. Despite his disheveled look, Amanda decided she could fancy Jason. Maybe he could be her next conquest. He didn't seem like he would need to be conquered, on second thought, more like rescued. Could she rescue him? Maybe she could, as long as it made him need her. Hey, at least she was honest with herself. She smiled flirtatiously. For his part, Jason was not so sure about Amanda. This woman looked like a man-eater, he reckoned. He was exhausted from meeting so many people that day, though, and thought his intuition might be clouded, particularly after she flashed him a stunning smile. Who had paid for those teeth, he wondered. After a brief appraisement, he decided to accept her into the house. Hell, what difference did it make anyway? He needed the money, and she sure as hell looked like she could give it to him. Give him the money, he repeated to himself, not give him other things. It had been a long day. Amanda moved in on Tuesday after a dramatic resignation. She detected a hint of amusement from her colleagues, but was confident that it was actually jealousy. She figured she would tell her parents in a few months. They didn't run in the same circles as she did, obviously, so it was unlikely they would find out from another source. She would just be careful with her money, scale back a bit from her normal spending. Maybe she'd get that dishy Jason to splurge on her instead of spending her own money. As she unpacked, she heard the front door open. Putting on her best smile, which she used for special occasions, she skipped to the foyer to meet one of her new roommates. Confronted by a windswept Jonathan, who was wearing a pair of bike shorts and a tight-fitting cycling jersey, she stopped dead in her tracks. She quickly recovered, but not before she caught the hint of a smile playing across his lips. She would have to tell Mason about this one, she thought, as she introduced herself.